A single shot from a plasma cannon was all it took. The alien's head exploded in a shower of blue gore. Bits of skull and brain splattered the bulkhead. Kyle Scorer lowered his pistol, the barrel smoking. He glared at the assembled Galactic Council with barely contained rage. "The next one of you spineless fucks who suggests surrendering to the Rizians gets to join your pal there in pieces. Humanity will never bow to those slaving bastards, not while I still draw breath." Kyle's words hung in the air, met with an array of shocked and angry expressions from the various alien species present. A cloaked figure emerged from the shadows, holding up its six-fingered hands in a gesture of calm. "Peace, Lieutenant Scorer. We did not bring you here to kill the council members. We brought you here because you're the best of the best, Earth's greatest warrior. We need your skills." Kyle narrowed his eyes at the being but holstered his weapon. He crossed his arms. "I'm listening, but I don't take orders from aliens. Earth is my priority." The figure gestured to a holographic display table, which started projecting star maps and diagrams. "The Rizian Empire has captured an ancient precursor artifact known as the Starforge. With it, they can construct massive fleets in days and obliterate entire systems. They plan to use it to conquer the galaxy and enslave us all." "Sounds like a typical Tuesday," Kyle quipped. "Why me? Don't you have hundreds of arbiters and peacemakers to handle this?" "The Rizians underestimate humans. They think you primitives, inferior. You're the only one who can infiltrate their territory and destroy the Star Forge." The cloaked figure produced a small sphere from its robes. "This prototype cloaking device will get you past their defenses. But it's unstable. The side effects are unknown." Kyle shrugged and took the sphere, tossing it in his hand. "I'll take my chances. Those four-armed freaks need to learn what happens when you piss off a human." He gave a mock salute to the scowling council members and strode from the chamber, his armor-plated boots clanking on the deck. This was a high-stakes mission. If he failed, humanity was doomed, along with every other free species. But if those alien bastards thought they could make slaves of mankind, they were about to learn that making humans angry was the last mistake they'd ever make. Kyle's stealth ship streaked through Rizian space, the prototype cloaking device masking his presence from their sensors. He kept a wary eye on the readouts, his fingers hovering over the weapon controls. Suddenly, an unusual energy signature pinged on his scanners. It was coming from a small, seemingly barren moon. Well, what do we have here?" Kyle muttered, adjusting course to investigate. Landing near the signal's origin, he stepped out onto the desolate surface. Towering ruins rose before him, the crumbling structures of a civilization lost to history. As he picked his way through the debris, his scanner began beeping more insistently. Without warning, plasma bolts sizzled past his head. Rizian soldiers poured out from behind the ruins, led by a hulking figure in black armor, Commander Xenos. Kyle dove for cover, returning fire with his pulse rifle. "You're a long way from home, human," Xenos sneered, his four arms each wielding a different weapon. "This moon and its secrets belong to the Rizian Empire." "Not for long, you slaving piece of shit," Kyle shot back, lobbing a grenade at the advancing soldiers. The explosion sent them flying, but Xenos charged through the smoke, a crackling energy blade in his hand. Kyle rolled to avoid the slash, coming up firing. His shots bounced off Xenos' shield, but he noticed the blade gave off the same readings as the artifact he was after. They clashed in a furious melee, Kyle's augmented strength and speed more than a match for the alien's extra arms. "Where's the artifact? Talk fast or I'll give you another mouth to talk out of." "That's too late, human," Xenos spat. "It's already at our research station. You'll never reach it in time." Kyle knocked the alien out cold with an armored fist to the face. He ran back to his ship, a new destination locked in, the research station, where the Rizian Empire was no doubt already trying to unlock the artifact's devastating power. Kyle approached the towering research station, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced down at the small device in his palm, praying it would work, as promised. Taking a deep breath, he pressed the activation switch. A tingling sensation spread across his skin as the device hummed to life. In seconds, his human features melted away, replaced by the scaly visage of a Rizian warrior. Squaring his shoulders, Kyle strode towards the heavily guarded entrance. The Rizian guards barely spared him a glance as he passed through the security checkpoint, his disguise fooling their scanners. Once inside, he navigated the twisting corridors, following the energy readings from the artifact. As he neared the heart of the facility, Kyle spotted a group of Rizian scientists gathered around a glowing object. At their center stood a tall, gaunt figure, Dr. Xerax, the lead researcher. Kyle edged closer, straining to overhear their conversation. "Tyr's potential is limitless," Xerax was saying, his voice dripping with malice. "With this artifact we can not only destroy entire star systems, but bend time itself to our will. The Rizian Empire will reign supreme across all of history." Kyle's blood ran cold. The stakes were even higher than he realized. Steeling himself, he waited for an opening. When Xerax turned his back, Kyle lunged forward, snatching the artifact from its pedestal. Alarms blared as the scientists scattered. Kyle sprinted for the exit, clutching the artifact to his chest. Rizian guards flooded the corridors, plasma rifles blazing. Kyle returned fire, his pulse rifle cutting down the first wave. Suddenly his disguise flickered, his human form briefly exposed. Cursing, Kyle ducked behind a pillar as the device stabilized. The malfunction bought the guards precious seconds to surround him. Thinking fast, Kyle tapped into the device's instability. He charged forward, his appearance shifting between human and Rizian with each step. The guards hesitated, confused by the rapidly changing target. Kyle exploited their uncertainty, closing the distance and engaging in a brutal melee. Plasma bolts filled the air as Kyle danced through the chaos, his augmented reflexes keeping him one step ahead. He used the flickering disguise to his advantage, alternating between human agility and Rizian strength to overwhelm his foes. All the while, the artifact pulsed in his grasp, its power tantalizing close. Kyle burst into the hangar bay, a trail of battered Rizian bodies in his wake. His ship waited, engines primed. But between him and freedom stood. Between Kyle and freedom stood Dr. Xerax, flanked by a squad of elite Rizian shock troopers. Their pulse rifles were trained on Kyle, fingers hovering over the triggers. Xerax's eyes gleamed with malevolent hunger as he eyed the artifact clutched in Kyle's hand. "I have no idea what you hold, human," Xerax hissed, his forked tongue flicking out. "That artifact is the key to ultimate power. With it, I can not only reshape the past, but glimpse the future. Join me, and together we will rule the galaxy." Kyle snorted, his grip tightening on the pulsing relic. "You must be even dumber than you look if you think I'd ever betray humanity. I'd rather die than help you enslave the galaxy." Kyle dove behind a cargo crate as plasma bolts scorched the air. He returned fire, downing 2 Rizians with well-placed shots, but more kept coming, forcing him back. His eyes darted to the artifact, then to the prototype device on his wrist. He had one chance. Leaping from cover, Kyle activated the device's self-destruct sequence. Xerax's eyes widened in horrified realization. "No!" The device detonated in a blinding flash. The shockwave sent Rizians flying like ragdolls, their armor shattering. Kyle was hurled back, his shield absorbing the worst of the blast. Alarms shrieked as the facility shook itself apart. Staggering to his feet, ears ringing, Kyle snatched up the artifact and sprinted for his ship. Plasma fire chased him, Rizians emerging from the smoke. Kyle zigzagged, rounds sparking off his armor. He leaped into the cockpit, punching the ignition. The ship roared to life, anti-grav thrusters lifting it off the deck. Kyle angled the nose towards the hangar door and hit the accelerator. The ship smashed through in a shower of twisted metal, out into the blackness of space. Proximity alerts blared as Rizian fighters swarmed after him, cannons blazing. Kyle wrenched the controls, sending his ship into a wild corkscrew. G-forces slammed him into his seat as he dodged and weaved, the inertial dampeners struggling to keep up. Rizian ships exploded around him, unable to match his ship's speed and maneuverability. Kyle rolled and looped, always staying one step ahead. But more fighters poured from the research station. He needed to escape. Plotting a jump to light speed, Kyle pushed the engines to their limits. The ship vibrated as if it would shake apart. Plasma fire hammered his shields. Alarms screamed. Just a few more seconds. With a flash, the ship leaped to faster than light speed, leaving the Rizians far behind. Kyle slumped back in his chair, his heart pounding. He glanced at the artifact in his hand. It pulsed faster now, an eerie inner light growing brighter. He needed answers. Consulting his star charts, Kyle locked in coordinates for a remote, uninhabited world, somewhere he could examine this strange relic away from prying eyes. The secrets it held could change the course of the war, for good or ill. As the ship hurtled through the swirling colors of hyperspace, Kyle couldn't shake the feeling that his mission had only just begun. The artifact seemed to whisper to him promises of power and knowledge that both tempted and terrified. He shook his head, trying to clear it. He had a job to do. The galaxy was counting on him. The blue tunnel of hyperspace stretched on, carrying Kyle and his mysterious cargo towards an uncertain future. In his hand, the artifact pulsed in time with his heartbeat, its light casting eerie shadows across the cockpit. There was no going back now. Whatever happened next, Kyle knew his fight against the Rizian Empire was far from over. The ship dropped out of hyperspace, decelerating hard. A stark grey planet loomed before Kyle, its surface pockmarked with craters and jagged canyons. No life signs registered on his scanners, the perfect place to investigate the artifact without interruptions. Kyle guided the ship down, landing thrusters kicking up clouds of ash and dust. He stepped out onto the barren plain, the artifact held tight in his grip. It vibrated now, reacting to some unseen stimulus. Sweeping his scanner over the desolate landscape, Kyle picked up faint energy readings emanating from a nearby canyon. With measured steps, he advanced towards. The ship touched down on the planet's ashen surface, kicking up a swirling cloud of grey dust. Kyle emerged, the artifact gripped tightly in his hand. Its pulsing light cast an eerie glow across the barren landscape. He headed into his ship's onboard lab, determined to unlock the secrets of this mysterious device. Hooking it up to the advanced analysis equipment, streams of data began to flood the screens. Kyle pored over the readouts, his brow furrowed in concentration. As he dug deeper, a shocking revelation came to light. This artifact didn't just have the power to manipulate time, it could also enhance the physical and mental capabilities of whoever wielded it. Kyle's mind raced with the possibilities. With this kind of power, he could single-handedly turn the tide against the Rizians. He could save countless lives and ensure humanity's freedom. But the Galactic Council's warnings echoed in his thoughts. Tampering with such advanced technology was incredibly risky. The consequences could be catastrophic. Kyle wrestled with the decision, the weight of the galaxy's fate heavy on his shoulders. As he sat lost in thought, a shrill alarm pierced the air. A hidden tracking device on the artifact had activated, broadcasting his location. Kyle swore, realizing his fatal mistake. He should have scanned for bugs. He barely had time to react before a Rizian strike craft screamed over the horizon, landing with a thunderous impact. The ramp lowered, disgorging Commander Xenos and a squad of heavily armed soldiers. They carried weapons Kyle had never seen before, advanced rifles that glowed with the same eerie light as the artifact. The Rizians had been busy reverse-engineering its secrets. "Did you really think you could hide from us, human?" Xenos sneered, his forearms each gripping a different deadly implement. "The artifact belongs to the Rizian Empire, and now so do you." Kyle dove for cover behind a jagged outcropping as searing plasma bolts whizzed past his head. He returned fire, his pulse rounds sparking off the Rizians' advanced armor. This fight was going to be tougher than any before. He reached for the artifact on his belt, feeling its power thrumming through his veins. If ever there was a time to use it, it was now. Kyle closed his eyes, letting the device's energy flow into him. Instantly his senses sharpened. Time seemed to slow. He could pick out each individual Rizian, see the weak points in their defenses. Kyle moved with blinding speed, his reflexes supercharged. He vaulted over the outcropping, plasma fire trailing in his wake. Kyle engaged the Rizians in a dizzying melee, his enhanced strength sending them flying. Xenos roared with fury, charging at Kyle with all four arms swinging. But as the battle raged, something strange began to happen. Kyle's vision blurred, replaced by a series of disjointed images. He saw flashes of alternate timelines, possible futures where the battle played out in 100 different ways. In one, he stood triumphant over Xenos' broken body. In another, humanity lay in chains, the Rizian flag flying over Earth. The visions assaulted Kyle's mind, threatening to overwhelm him. He shook his head, trying to clear it, but the momentary distraction was all Xenos needed. The alien commander slammed into Kyle, knocking him to the ground. The artifact skittered away, just out of reach. Kyle rolled to his feet, facing down Xenos and the remaining Rizians. The odds were stacked against him, but he was a human, the best of the best. He'd faced impossible odds before, and come out on top. He charged forward with a roar. The battle joined once more. Xenos raised the artifact, its light pulsing menacingly. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and only one of them would walk away. Xenos charged, his forearms a blur of deadly motion. Kyle activated the artifact, ancient symbols flashing to life across its surface. A shimmering wave burst forth, enveloping the battlefield in an eerie glow. To the Rizians, Kyle seemed to vanish, only to reappear behind them in the blink of an eye. He moved with impossible speed, their plasma bolts crawling through the air like lazy insects. Kyle flowed through the distorted time, disarming the soldiers with surgical precision. Bones snapped, and weapons clattered to the ground as he neutralized each threat in turn. In a matter of heartbeats, only Xenos remained standing. The Rizian commander roared in frustration, his movements sluggish against Kyle's enhanced speed. They clashed in a whirlwind of strikes and blocks, Kyle's augmented strength more than a match for Xenos' extra limbs. As they fought, Kyle's mind raced with visions of a dark future. Cities burned under Rizian conquest, humans toiling in chains. The artifact glowed in Xenos' hands, a harbinger of despair. Gritting his teeth, Kyle redoubled his assault, desperate to prevent that grim fate. He rained down blows on Xenos, his armor buckling under the onslaught. With a final, devastating punch, Kyle sent the Rizian commander crashing to the ground, unconscious. Snatching up the artifact, Kyle staggered back, his body trembling with exhaustion. The temporal distortion dissipated, leaving him drained and disoriented. Each step felt like wading through quicksand as he stumbled towards his ship. A figure emerged from the shadows, causing Kyle to snap his weapon up. He blinked, trying to focus on the approaching form. A woman, human, her features eerily familiar. "Kyle Scorer," she called out, her voice urgent. "We don't have much time." "Who the hell are you?" Kyle demanded, his aim unwavering. "My name is Arya. I'm from a future where your mission fails and the Rizians conquer the galaxy." She gestured to the artifact. "That device is the key to everything." Kyle frowned, his mind reeling. "How do I know this isn't some kind of trick?" "Because I've seen what happens if you return that artifact to the Council." Arya's eyes burned with intensity. "They'll study it, try to harness its power. But they'll fail, and the Rizians will steal it back. Billions will die, entire worlds enslaved." Plasma fire streaked overhead as Rizian reinforcements descended from the sky. Kyle glanced at his ship, then back at Arya. Trust her, or complete his mission. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Arya extended her hand. "You have to trust me, Kyle. We can stop this war before it begins, but only if you're willing to take a leap of faith." Kyle hesitated, his grip tightening on the artifact. The Rizian reinforcements drew closer, their plasma fire scorching the air. He glanced at Arya, her eyes pleading. With a deep breath, he made his choice. "It's not, I swear on my life." Arya activated her device, a shimmering portal materializing before them. "Quickly, before it's too late." Kyle charged through the portal, Arya on his heels. A rush of energy engulfed them, reality warping and twisting. Seconds later, they stumbled out into a war-torn landscape, the sky choked with smoke and ash. Towering Rizian structures loomed over the ruins of human cities, their sleek architecture a stark contrast to the devastation below. Arya led Kyle through the rubble, her movements furtive and practiced. "Welcome to the future," she said grimly, "or what's left of it." As they picked their way through the debris, Arya explained the grim reality of this timeline. The Rizians had used the artifact to crush all resistance, enslaving humanity and countless other species. Earth was now a mere mining colony, its resources stripped to fuel the Rizian war machine. "In this future your mission failed," Arya said, her voice heavy with regret. "The artifact fell into Rizian hands, and they used its power to conquer the galaxy." Kyle clenched his fists, anger and determination surging through him. "Not if I have anything to say about it." Arya led him to a hidden resistance base, a network of tunnels and bunkers beneath the ruins. Inside, a ragtag group of human survivors huddled around flickering holoscreens, their faces gaunt and haunted. "This is all that's left of the resistance," Arya said. "We've been fighting the Rizians for decades, but their grip on the galaxy only grows tighter." Kyle stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "Not anymore. We're going to infiltrate their central command and destroy the artifact. Cut off the head, and the body will fall." The resistance fighters exchanged skeptical glances, but Arya vouched for Kyle's skills and determination. They began to plan their assault, poring over schematics and intel reports. As the preparation continued, Kyle couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He turned, catching a glimpse of a figure in the shadows. The man stepped forward, his features achingly familiar. It was an older version of Kyle himself, battle-scarred and world-weary. The elder Kyle regarded his younger self with a mix of surprise and resignation. "So you're the one they sent back," he said, his voice gruff. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Kyle stared at his future self, a chill running down his spine. The implications were staggering. If he failed, this is what he would become, a bitter, broken man, forever haunted by his mistakes. The two Kyles sized each other up, the tension palpable. The elder Kyle's gaze flickered to the artifact on his younger self's belt. "You have no idea what that thing is capable of," he warned. "The power it holds, the temptation it offers. It's too much for any one man to bear." Kyle met his future self's gaze unflinchingly. "I'm not just any man. I'm the one who's going to set things right." The resistance fighters gathered their gear, checking weapons and reviewing their roles. Arya handed Kyle a sleek advanced rifle, its design unfamiliar. "Rizian tech," she explained. "We've managed to scavenge and reverse engineer some of their weapons. You'll need every advantage you can get." As they prepared to move out, the elder Kyle pulled his younger self aside. He pressed a small crystalline device into Kyle's hand. "If things go south, if you find yourself with no other choice, use this. It's a temporal anchor. It will stabilize the timeline, prevent any further changes." Kyle nodded, slipping the device into his pocket. He joined Arya and the resistance fighters as they set out towards the Rizian Central Command, a towering citadel that loomed over the ruins like a dark, twisted spire. They moved through the shadows, avoiding Rizian patrols and surveillance drones. The closer they got to the citadel, the heavier the security became. Genetically enhanced Rizian soldiers patrolled the perimeter, their armor bristling with advanced weaponry. Kyle and Arya exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. They had come too far to turn back now. With a final nod, they charged forward, the resistance fighters at their side. All hell broke loose as plasma fire filled the air, the Rizians responding with deadly force. Kyle and Arya fought their way through the chaos, their skills honed by years of battle. They breached the citadel's outer defenses, alarms blaring in their wake. Rizian soldiers poured into the corridors, engaging the intruders in vicious close-quarters combat. Kyle found himself face-to-face with a hulking Rizian brute, its forearms wielding a devastating energy mace. He ducked and weaved, his augmented reflexes barely keeping him ahead of the creature's blows. Arya appeared at his side, her rifle spitting plasma. Together they brought the brute down, its armor cracking under the onslaught. They pushed deeper into the citadel, following the artifact's energy signature. The resistance fighters fell one by one, overwhelmed by the Rizian onslaught. Soon, only Kyle and Arya remained. They burst into the central chamber, a cavernous room dominated by a pulsing, swirling vortex of energy. At its center, suspended in a web of crackling tendrils, was the artifact. And standing before it, a twisted grin on his face, was the elder Kyle. "I knew you'd make it," he said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "You're me, after all, stubborn to the end." Kyle raised his rifle, aiming it at his future self. "Step away from the artifact, it's over." The elder Kyle laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Over? It's only just begun, don't you see? With this power we can reshape the galaxy, mold it to our will. No more Rizians, no more war. Just peace." Arya shook her head, her eyes hard. "That's not peace, it's tyranny. You've become the very thing we've been fighting against." The elder Kyle's gaze snapped to her, his face contorting with rage. "You don't understand, none of you do. I've seen what happens if we fail. The suffering, the death. It never ends. This is the only way." Kyle stepped forward, his rifle unwavering. "There's always another way, we just have to be willing to fight for it." The two Kyles circled each other, the artifact's energy pulsing between them. In a blur of motion they clashed, their weapons forgotten as they engaged in a brutal hand-to-hand brawl. They were evenly matched, each anticipating the other's moves. Blows landed with bone-crunching force, blood spattering the chamber floor. Arya watched, her heart in her throat as the two Kyles battled for the fate of the galaxy. She knew that if the elder Kyle won, all hope would be lost. In a final desperate gambit, Kyle activated the temporal anchor. The device pulsed, its energy enveloping the chamber. The elder Kyle stumbled, his form flickering like a glitching hologram. Kyle stood over his fallen foe, chest heaving. He looked to Arya, a question in his eyes. She nodded, understanding. "Do it. Destroy the artifact. End this once and for all." With a final, determined stride, Kyle approached the swirling vortex. He raised the artifact, feeling its power thrumming through his veins. With a roar of defiance, he hurled it into the heart of the maelstrom. The artifact shattered, its energy exploding outward in a blinding flash. Kyle and Arya were thrown back, the shockwave slamming them against the chamber walls. As the light faded, they staggered to their feet, blinking away the spots in their vision. The vortex was gone, the artifact reduced to nothing more than shimmering dust. The elder Kyle groaned, pushing himself up on his elbows. He looked around, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. What have you done?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. The elder Kyle stared at his younger self, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Slowly he nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I remember now, what it was like to be you, to have that fire, that determination. I lost sight of that somewhere along the way." Arya stepped forward, placing a hand on the elder Kyle's shoulder. "It's not too late, we can still make things right, together." The elder Kyle looked at her, then back to his younger self. He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. "All right, let's do this. Let's take back our future." As the three of them stood amidst the ruins of the Rizian citadel, a new sense of purpose settled over them. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Kyle looked to the horizon, where the first rays of dawn were beginning to peek through the smoke and ash. A new day was dawning, and with it, a new hope for the galaxy. He glanced down at the temporal anchor in his hand, a sudden realization hitting him. If he could use this device to stabilize the timeline, to prevent the Rizians from ever getting their hands on the artifact. Kyle turned to Arya and his future self, a plan already forming in his mind. "I have an idea," he said, a grin spreading across his face, "but you're not going to like it." Armed with renewed purpose, Kyle, Arya, and the elder Kyle fought their way through the Rizian Citadel's final defenses. A squad of psychic warriors, their minds augmented by the artifact's power, unleashed a barrage of mental attacks, seeking to crush the intruder's resolve. Illusions flickered around them, twisting reality into nightmarish visions of failure and despair. Kyle gritted his teeth, his mind assaulted by images of Earth in ruins, humanity enslaved by the Rizians. Beside him, Arya and his older self fought against their own mental battles, the strain evident on their faces. But the Resistance fighters were not unprepared. They activated the advanced psionic shielding devices crafted by the human resistance, the technology creating a protective barrier around their minds. The illusions shattered like glass, and the trio pushed forward, their weapons blazing. As they neared the artifact chamber, a figure emerged from the shadows. Dr. Zyrax, his features twisted by age and cruelty. With a wave of his hand, he activated the artifact's ultimate defense, a temporal stasis field that enveloped the room. Kyle, Arya, and the elder Kyle found themselves frozen in place, their bodies locked in a state of suspended animation. Dr. Zyrax laughed, his voice echoing in the eerie stillness. "Fools! Did you really think you could stop me?" he gloated, circling the immobilized trio. "I have seen the future, every future, and in all of them, the Rizians reign supreme. I have manipulated events across countless timelines to ensure our victory. You never had a chance." Kyle struggled against the stasis field, his mind racing. There had to be a way to break free, to stop Zyrax and destroy the artifact. As he focused his thoughts, he felt a flicker of something deep within himself, a latent psionic ability, dormant in all humans. With a surge of mental energy, Kyle reached out to the artifact, his consciousness brushing against its ancient, alien presence. To his surprise, the artifact responded, a wordless communication passing between them. In that moment, Kyle understood. The artifact was not just a tool of destruction, but a living entity, a repository of knowledge and power from a long-forgotten civilization. It had been waiting all this time for someone worthy to wield its true potential. Kyle's mind merged with the artifact's consciousness, a flood of information pouring into his thoughts. He saw the rise and fall of countless empires, the birth and death of stars, the intricate web of cause and effect that spanned the cosmos. And with that knowledge came power, the power to shape reality itself. Kyle focused his will, and the stasis field shattered like a pane of glass. Dr. Zyrax stumbled back, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he sputtered, reaching for his weapon. But Kyle was faster, his mind and body enhanced by the artifact's energy. He closed the distance in a blur of motion, his fist connecting with Zyrax's jaw in a sickening crunch. As the Rizian leader crumpled to the floor, Kyle turned to Arya and his older self, a fierce determination burning in his eyes. "Let's finish this," he said, his voice thrumming with power. "Once and for all." Kyle's consciousness merged with Kronos, the ancient sentient artifact. In an instant he understood. Kronos was no mere tool, but a living entity, created eons ago by a long-vanished race to safeguard the galaxy's balance. "Greetings, Kyle Scorer," Kronos' voice resonated within his mind, ageless and powerful. "I have witnessed your courage and purity of purpose. You alone are worthy to wield my power." Images flashed through Kyle's mind. Countless civilizations rising and falling, species misusing Kronos' gifts for conquest and destruction. The galaxy cried out for a champion, a guardian to restore equilibrium. "I grant you full access to my abilities," Kronos intoned. "Together we shall end this cycle of chaos and bring forth a new era of peace." Energy surged through Kyle's body, ancient power coursing through his veins. With a thought, he shattered the temporal stasis field, freeing himself and his companions. Dr. Zyrax stumbled back, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he snarled, raising his hands to unleash a psychic assault. But Kyle was faster. Guided by Kronos, he met Xyrax's attack head-on, their minds clashing on the astral plane. Around them, the fabric of reality warped and twisted, timelines bleeding into one another. Arya and the elder Kyle sprang into action, engaging the Rizian forces in a desperate battle. Plasma fire lit up the chamber as they fought to buy Kyle time. In the eye of the psychic storm, Kyle and Xyrax grappled for control, their wills locked in a titanic struggle. Xyrax battered at Kyle's defenses, seeking to dominate his mind and seize Kronos' power for himself. But Kyle's resolve was unbreakable. Bolstered by Kronos' strength, he pushed back against Xyrax's onslaught, slowly gaining ground. "You fight for a lost cause," Xyrax sneered, his mental voice dripping with venom. "The Rizians are destined to rule the galaxy. Surrender, and I may spare your miserable life." Kyle's response was a surge of pure, unbridled willpower. He slammed into Xyrax's mind, shattering his defenses like glass. The Rizian leader reeled, his psyche laid bare before Kyle's onslaught. In that moment, Kyle understood. Violence and domination would only perpetuate the cycle of suffering. To truly win, he had to show Xyrax a better way. Reaching deep within himself, Kyle drew upon Kronos' ultimate gift, the power to reshape reality itself. He gathered his thoughts, focusing on a single shining vision. A future where Rizians and humans stood side by side as equals, their strengths complementing each other in perfect harmony. With a burst of psychic energy, Kyle projected this vision directly into Xyrax's mind. The Rizian leader gasped, his eyes widening in shock as the images flooded his consciousness. He saw a galaxy at peace, where science and exploration flourished under the joint leadership of humans and Rizians. He witnessed the birth of new technologies, the forging of unbreakable alliances, the dawn of a golden age unlike any the universe had ever known. And in that instant, Dr. Xyrax understood the true cost of his ambition. The lives lost, the worlds shattered, the potential squandered in the name of conquest and control. Tears streamed down his face as the weight of his actions crashed down upon him. "Enough," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "I surrender. The artifact, Kronos, is yours. Take it, and use its power wisely." With those words, the psychic duel ended as abruptly as it had begun. Kyle and Xyrax collapsed to their knees, exhausted but alive. Around them, the Rizian forces lowered their weapons, stunned by the sudden turn of events. Arya rushed to Kyle's side, helping him to his feet. The elder Kyle stood over Xyrax, his expression unreadable. "It's over," Kyle said, his voice filled with quiet triumph. "The war, the violence, the hate, it ends now. Today we begin anew." He looked to Kronos, still pulsing with power in his hand. The ancient artifact had chosen him for a reason, and with its guidance, he would lead the galaxy into an era of unprecedented unity and prosperity. But the road ahead would not be easy. Change never was. Even now Kyle could sense the ripples of his actions spreading out across the cosmos, altering the course of countless lives and civilizations. With the battle won, Kyle and Arya stood over the defeated Dr. Xyrax, the artifact pulsing in Kyle's hand. Kronos' voice echoed in his mind, praising his courage and wisdom. "It is time for you to return to your own era," Kronos said. "But heed my words. Wielding my power is a heavy burden. Difficult choices lie ahead." Kyle nodded, his jaw set. He turned to his older self, who stood tall amidst the ruins of the Rizian command center. "I'm staying," the elder Kyle said, his eyes filled with determination. "This future needs rebuilding. I'll guide them, help create the peace we fought for." The two Kyles clasped hands, a silent understanding passing between them. With a final nod, Kyle and Arya stepped through the shimmering portal Kronos opened, the vortex of swirling energy whisking them back to their own time. They emerged in the heart of the Galactic Council chambers, the sudden appearance of the long-lost hero and the legendary artifact sending shockwaves through the assembled delegates. Cheers erupted as Kyle strode forward, holding the artifact aloft. "The Rizian threat is ended," he declared, his voice ringing with authority. "The artifact is secured. The galaxy is safe." In the days that followed, Kyle was hailed as a savior, the council showering him with accolades and honors. But as he recounted his mission in the debriefings, a disturbing truth came to light. The council had known of the artifact's true power all along. They had sent Kyle to retrieve it, not to safeguard the galaxy, but to seize its power for themselves. The realization hit Kyle like a punch to the gut. "You used me," he snarled, slamming his fist on the table. "This was never about protecting the innocent, it was about control." The council members shifted uncomfortably, their expressions a mix of guilt and defiance. In that moment, Kyle saw the truth, the corruption, the hunger for power, the willingness to sacrifice lives for their own gain. It wasn't just the Rizians, it was everywhere, even here at the very heart of galactic government. Kyle's hand closed around the artifact, Kronos' power thrumming through his veins. He knew what he had to do. In a blur of motion, he leaped over the table, snatching the artifact from its pedestal. Alarms blared as he sprinted for the door, council guards hot on his heels. Plasma bolts sizzled past his head as he raced through the corridors, the artifact guiding him towards his ship. He heard Arya's voice over the comm, urging him onwards. He burst into the hangar, his ship's engines already roaring to life. Leaping into the cockpit, Kyle punched the thrusters, the force slamming him back into his seat. The ship tore out of the hangar, plasma fire chasing it into the stars. As the council headquarters faded behind him, Kyle felt a grim resolve settle over him. He was a fugitive now, hunted by the very government he had served. But he had the artifact, and with it, the power to change things. The galaxy was a mess, a tangled web of lies and hidden agendas. But Kyle would unravel it one thread at a time. He would expose the truth, no matter the cost. And maybe, just maybe, he could forge a new path towards a future of true freedom and justice. It wouldn't be easy. He was one man against the powers that be, with only an ancient relic and his own wits to guide him. But Kyle had faced impossible odds before, and he sure as hell wasn't going to stop now. The stars stretched out before him, an endless expanse of possibility and peril. Kyle set his jaw, his grip tightening on the controls. The artifact pulsed at his side, its power a constant reminder of the burden he now carried. The engines roared as the ship hurtled deeper into the void, chasing the thin light of distant suns. Kyle didn't know what challenges awaited him out there in the vast dark of space. Political intrigue, shadowy conspiracies, the machinations of would-be tyrants, a galaxy's worth of danger and deceit. But he would face it all, one planet at a time, one crisis at a time. He was done playing by their rules. From now on he forged his own path, and God help anyone who stood in his way. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.